This is the presentation of Chapter 3, which is titled The Biology of Behavior. And we'll start out by saying I do not have a degree in biology. It's in psychology, so I struggle with some of these terms and some of these ideas as some of you might also. But we will go through them the best we can and try and learn as much as we can. So does heredity affect our behavior? Heredity is essentially the same as genetics. Behavioral genetics is the scientific study of the role of heredity in behavior. Remember what we've stated before, that psychology studies behavior, thoughts, and emotions. So this chapter is mainly looking at, okay, does genetics affect our behavior? It's important to remember there isn't just one gene that produces a specific behavior. It is a complicated mixture of the combination of many genes, which is nature or genetics, and the effect of your environment, which is also called nurture. The nature versus nurture debate is huge in psychology. In other words, genetics versus environment. Nature refers to the biological transmission of traits that affect our thoughts and behavior. And nurture refers to the effect of our environment on our thoughts and behavior. To define environment, that might include your culture, the people in your household and the way they behave. It might even depend on your level of nutrition, your level of education. Those are all things in your environment. And as you might imagine, the environment surrounding us as children is most influential on our future thoughts and behavior. Children are like sponges. They soak up everything. So their environment is just, especially, as I mentioned, they're influential on their future. Twin and adoption studies can help psychologists determine what behaviors are caused by nature or genetics versus those caused by nurture or our environment. Of course, we know, as we mentioned earlier, that the great majority of behaviors are determined by both our genetics and our environment. So what are twin studies? In a twin study, the psychologist would study identical twins versus fraternal twins. So why is this useful when studying nature versus nurture? Well, psychologists are looking to see if identical twins who have the exact same DNA are more similar in thoughts and behavior than fraternal twins who do not share the exact same DNA. So having the same DNA, you would think they would have the same behavior if everything is determined by genetics, but we know that's not the case. Also, adoption studies are a great way to study the nature versus nurture debate. Obviously, it's the study of people who were adopted. So why is this useful when studying nature versus nurture? It allows psychologists to compare an adopted child to their genetic parents and to their adoptive parents, which their adoptive parents have created their environment, and obviously their genetic parents have created their genes. Which ones are they more like? Are they more like the genetic parents, or are they more like the adoptive parents? Monozygotic twins who were separated at birth can be especially informative, regarding the nature versus nurture debate. They have the exact same DNA, but were raised in different environments. So are they more like each other or their adoptive parents? Are they more like each other, which would be the same genetics, or their environment, their adoptive parents? The nervous system, we'll jump into discussing some different types of systems in the body. What is the nervous system? It's made up of the brain, spinal cord, and many neurons throughout the whole body. Imagine the nervous system as a tree inside your body. The central nervous system includes the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system includes those neurons that are throughout the whole body. The somatic nervous system is specifically related to voluntary systems of the body, such as skeletal muscles. In other words, you have to think to move your arm. It doesn't just automatically happen. Whereas the autonomic nervous system is specifically related to involuntary systems of the body, For example, their internal organs. You don't have to think for your stomach to digest food. You don't have to think about your heart beating for it to beat. Those things just automatically happen. So what does the nervous system do? Well, it contains neurons that transmit messages throughout the body. They can receive these messages from other neurons, or they might receive them from the senses, from touch, from light, from sound, and we'll discuss different types of neurons in a future slide. So let's discuss the autonomic nervous system a little bit further. Remember, the autonomic nervous system controls things that just automatically happen. It's further divided into two separate categories. The sympathetic nervous system, which is the system that is arousing and activates bodily systems in times of emergency by increasing the heart rate, dilating the pupils of the eyes, or inhibiting digestion. The parasympathetic nervous system is the system that is relaxing and serves to calm down the arousal produced by the sympathetic nervous system. And remember, I said previously we would discuss different types of neurons. Motor neurons carry commands for movement from the brain to the muscles. Mirror neurons appear to contribute to us learning by what we see, learning by observation. Interneurons communicate only with other neurons. In other words, there's no communication from our senses with interneurons. It's just neuron to neuron communication. So how is information transmitted from one neuron to another? It's transmitted by neurotransmitters. I included a chart on the next slide of the most common neurotransmitters and their functions. So we'll look at those, but also take a look at the picture. It just gives an idea of how the neurotransmitters float in between two neurons. So something good to look at. Different types of neurotransmitters. I'm not going to read every one of these and all the information. That would take a while, but I'm sure you guys have heard of most of these. Serotonin, endorphins, adrenaline, those are all common things that are neurotransmitters that help us and influence our behavior. So is the brain able to make new neural connections? Are we born with all the neural connections we're going to have, or do we make new ones? Well, yes, of course the brain is able to make new neural connections. As discussed in your textbook, this is called neuroplasticity and is defined as the brain's ability to adopt new functions, reorganize itself, or make new neural connections throughout life as a function of experience. If our brain wasn't able to make new neural connections, then we would only have what we were born with. But we know that with experience in our environment, our brain makes new connections and thinks new things. So let's look a little bit further at the brain. We'll quickly kind of go through these different parts of the brain and what they manage. The medulla regulates basic functions such as heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration. The pons is involved in functions related to attention, sleep, alertness, and respiration. The cerebellum is involved in maintaining balance and in controlling motor or muscle behavior. The reticular activating system, or RAS, is vital in the functions of attention, sleep, and arousal. The thalamus serves as a relay station for sensory information, sensory being what we see, what we feel, what we hear, the five senses. The hypothalamus is vital in the regulation of body temperature, hunger, thirst, motivation, and emotion. The amygdala is connected with aggressive behavior, and the cerebrum is responsible for thinking and language. So it's easy to see that all of these parts of the brain are related to behavior and the way we think and the way we feel, which is what we know psychology studies. So let's also look at the endocrine system. Well, what is it? It is glands in the body that release hormones directly into the bloodstream. Different types of glands. There's the pituitary gland, which regulates the growth of muscles, bones, and other glands. The pineal gland, which secretes the hormone melatonin, which is very popular right now. Our body does secrete some of it naturally from the pineal gland, but I know a lot of people also take it because it helps regulate the sleep-wake cycle. The thyroid gland helps regulate the body's metabolism, which metabolism is the rate at which the body uses oxygen and produces energy. The adrenal glands regulate the heartbeat, increase resistance to stress, and promote muscle development. Finally, the testes and ovaries produce steroids, including testosterone from the testes, which cause the male sex organs to develop, and estrogen, which fosters female reproductive capacity. So those are the basics of this chapter. Again, I'm certainly not a biology major, so I don't know all the little details about the biology of behavior, but I would certainly be glad to answer any questions that you might have, or if you want to discuss anything further, that's no problem. Thanks a lot.